Finally, after years of waiting, Kalos is redeemed. Zygarde got its epic moment in the sun, Mega Evolution made its triumphant return, Lumio City has never been better, and Xerneas and Yveltal finally got their story importance. Oh wait, except they didn't. They were forgettable post-game encounters that contributed nothing to the actual story. Well, this lore video is going to be a bit of a struggle. Xerneas and Yveltal, the mascots of Generation 6's Pokémon X and Y. Boy, that alone explains a lot. After the extremely plot-heavy Generation 5 games that focused a ton on their box legendaries, X and Y were a bit of a return to the classic Pokémon formula. Legendary Pokémon exist in these games, barely, and that's all there really is to say. Heck, most of Kalos' legendary Pokémon are reused Generation 1 Pokémon like the legendary birds and Mewtwo, which says a lot. Anywho, most of X and Y unfolds really without any whispers of these guys. Sycamore pretty much only makes a few vague references to them throughout the game, notably towards the end in Dendemil Town when Game Freak must have realized, uh-oh, we're in the third act and we haven't even name-dropped our legendary Pokemon yet. Though there is one other NPC who mentions how not much is known about them because they've been asleep for so long. The Pokédex sheds more light on this, stating that Xerneas slumbers for 1,000 years at a time. No specific number is ever given for Yveltal, but I'm going to assume it's probably close to the same number. There's also a small lore dump about both of these Pokemon from an NPC in Anastar City, who will tell you one of two stories depending on the version. In X, he says that 800 years ago, people in Pokemon felt a surge of vitality and a forest sprang up out of nowhere, implying that this was when Xerneas last roamed the land before entering its dormant tree state. In Y, he claims that 800 years ago, Kalos was shrouded in darkness and death, as Yveltal absorbed energy to prepare for its slumber. It's never made explicitly clear where these two came to rest, as a random Team Flare grunt only mentions finding them in the mountains. If I had to guess, Xerneas was most likely slumbering in Route 20, close to the Pokemon Village. It's by far the largest forest in Kalos and the only one located in the mountain region. Plus, the forest somehow thrives completely fine in the middle of the coldest area of Kalos. Kinda suspicious, not gonna lie. Yveltal is a little more difficult to pin down though, as it could feasibly have slept anywhere, but more likely in the desolate snowy areas in northeast Kalos. Still, these are just guesses, and they may actually be the first and only legendary mascots so far who aren't associated with any particular location. The only thing we do know about them in-game is that they were involved with the creation and firing of the ultimate weapon, as it would have been an impossible feat without their immense amounts of energy. As the player, you are 100% forced to capture them to stop Lysander's plan and drain the ultimate weapon of most of its energy. And from there is nothing left in these games to discuss of Xerneas or Yveltal. So, why is that the case? Now, I know that you're probably just settling into your chair to learn more about these legendary Pokemon, but I do have to do a quick check and make sure that you're sitting in the right chair. One like my brand new Ergo X Pro from the sponsor of today's video, Flexispot. That's right, Flexispot is back. After taking care of my standing desk and my treadmill, they hooked me up with a brand new office chair, and I absolutely love it. Mine came with the special Cloud Tech cushion for hours of long gaming or video editing. It also has a mesh option if you prefer to keep yourself a bit cooler. It's very customizable. It also features next generation lumbar and headrest support that adjusts with your posture, 7D linkage armrests that move with your body when you recline, which is fantastic for when you want to go down one of those 3 AM YouTube rabbit holes. It has incredible back supports and even comes with its own footrest. Speaking of the long haul, this thing is built to last, with a reinforced nylon and fiberglass frame, and a lightweight aluminum base. It supports up to 551 pounds, again, cat for reference. I've gone through a ton of office chairs in my 15 years here on YouTube, and as an elderly 20-something-year-old, let me just say, this is by far the most comfortable and adjustable chair that I have ever owned. So what are you waiting for? Be sure to click my link in the description down below to take advantage of Flexispot's Amazon Black Friday deals and get up to 60% off on select products. Doing so also supports the channel, while also supporting your back at the same time. Thank you Flexispot for sponsoring, let's get back to the video. Okay, so now that we've covered what Xerneas and Yveltal do in Pokemon X and Y, here's a little background about them more broadly speaking. If you watched the Zygarde video I recently did, then you already know that these guys are based on Norse mythology, specifically the stags and the eagle that rest at the top of the World Tree. That's right, you watch my videos, you get an A in history class, it's just that easy. More broadly speaking, they also represent the concepts of life and death, or life and destruction, as the anime and Pokédex would have you believe. Can't get too edgy, this is still Pokemon after all. In fact, I actually believe this is part of the reason why Xerneas and Yveltal have such small roles in the story. X and Y already pushed the boundaries of how dark a Pokemon story was willing to get. Perhaps they knew this and wanted to avoid drawing any more attention to the Pokemon who literally embodied life and death to keep the game's rating suitable for children. That's just a personal theory of mine though. But also, it could be that these two are intentionally passive legendaries because of their representation of life and death. Life and death happens all around us every single day. They are fundamentally silent concepts that are always persisting. Maybe Xerneas and Yveltal are meant to reflect this by not taking an active role in the story. This may also be the reason why Xerneas and Yveltal don't clash in the manner that people expect them to. Groudon and Kyogre, or Zekrom and Reshiram, both represented opposite concepts that would fiercely battle one another whenever they came together. Heck, even Dialga and Palkia do it in the Darkrai movie, and they don't even have any reason to hate each other aside from being siblings. However, Xerneas and Yveltal don't appear to have any explicit beef with one another. In the 17th movie, Diancie and the Cocoon of Destruction, Xerneas briefly steps in to calm the rampaging Yveltal who had been prematurely awakened, but there is no big battle here. I mean, maybe they just ran out of time, like One Punch Man Season 3, rest in peace. And yes, the Adventures manga does directly contradict this by having Xerneas and Yveltal fight each other quite a bit. But they do eventually realize the havoc they're wreaking on the ecosystem and decide to willingly return to their dormant states at the end. With this being said, I think Xerneas and Yveltal are very well aware of how important the cycle of death and rebirth is. Everything that lives eventually dies. It's the fundamental rule of life. And no, I am not quoting that one random NPC from ZA, it's just a fact. This may also be the reason why Xerneas and Yveltal are the only legendary mascots with the exact same stat distribution. Perhaps they're meant to be more harmonious and less opposites than you would think. Yveltal is often framed as the bad one because of its connection to death, but an overabundance of life can be just as damaging. This was the whole point behind Lysander's motivations in X and Y. If there's an excess of life, the world would turn ugly. Though his methods are insane, to a certain degree, he's right. And Pokemon Legends ZA dives into this idea further. While Yveltal is more aligned with the Ultimate Weapon's ability to take life on a massive scale, Ange is more aligned with Xerneas, being a device that was designed to share life energy with everyone. However, when Ange is overloaded and gives too much life energy out, you can see how it creates problems for everyone in Lumio City. It leads to Rogue Mega Evolution and a Doomsday event on the same scale as Lysander's Ultimate Weapon plot, even though this one wasn't done out of malice. And no, this does not make the X or Y timelines canon. I've seen way too many people fighting about this online. The game is very intentional in making sure that ZA is canon to both versions of games, as Team Player captured both Xerneas and Yveltal 5 years ago, and the Ultimate Weapon schematics in Lysander Labs show it with both of its appearances from X and Y. Look, the Ultimate Weapon could already give and take life, so it's not a huge deal, it works both ways. I'm just pointing out how Ange is way more Xerneas pilled, while the OG weapon is way more Yveltal pilled. And if you're based pilled, then you'll subscribe to my channel right now because it'll make me feel good. Thank you. Anyhow, this loose thematic connection between them and the two devices is really all they get in Legend ZA's story. They later appear as post-game catches, which also raises some questions given that Callum and Serena were forced to capture them in X and Y. Maybe they released them, maybe people just aren't meant to wield their power for long periods of time, I don't know. But regardless, the only reason they show up in the postgame is that they were attracted to the massive amounts of mega energy that Ange was emitting. And that's it! No new story, no new lore, no new forms, although there was a Game Freak leak that suggested that these two likely wouldn't get any new forms until X and Y are remade one day. I get it, let's not ruin Pokemon Champions with a Mega Xerneas right out the gate, but still! That likely means there's going to be at least another decade before we see any new Xerneas or Yveltal material in the core series. Lastly, there is only a single anime episode that Xerneas and Yveltal have both appeared in. The Legend of X, Y, and Z is a special episode that tells another legend about Xerneas and Yveltal, who were basically absent for the entire XY anime outside of that one movie. Yeah, Xerneas does make a cameo during the summer camp arc, but he just kind of stands there in Aura Farms. It's kind of a nothing burger. Basically, this episode delves into the heroic efforts of a man named Jan who tries to seek out Xerneas after hearing a prophecy from Olympia's ancestor that Yveltal would soon arrive and wipe out everything. Jan eventually finds Xerneas and is able to restore the land that Yveltal destroyed, but it refrains from restoring the lives that Yveltal took in the process, showing that Xerneas does understand the natural balance between life and death. Sometimes people just have to die, and that's okay. I think the shtick here is that Xerneas only gives life to new things that are naturally going to get it. It's not in the business of saving people or bringing them back. That ball seems to be more in Zygarde's court based off of what Lysander told us in Legend ZA. I mean, this is directly contradicted by the Diancie movie, where Xerneas does resurrect everybody who was killed by Yveltal, but again, Pokemon movies specifically are like the least lore-accurate thing ever. And also, come on, they're not gonna kill off Pikachu in a movie, are you kidding me? But more often than not, Xerneas and Yveltal appear to understand this balance. Never has Zygarde had to step in to correct their actions. Zygarde has only ever acted against people or machines who tried to manipulate Xerneas or Yveltal's abilities. The duo themselves, they're just doing what they're supposed to do. So after going over literally all the material in the franchise that we have on Xerneas and Yveltal, why do they offer so little to their games? In reality, Pokemon X and Y were huge undertakings. They were the first fully 3D mainline titles. They had tons of cut content and were relatively shallow in multiple aspects just to meet a release date. It's possible that they quite literally just didn't have the time to flesh out Xerneas or Yveltal. I mean, even their dormant forms, the Tree of Life and Cocoon of Destruction, were named by Mystery Dungeon and the Diancie movie respectively. They don't even have canon names in the core games. Even in Legend ZA, this was envisioned as the Zygarde game that Zygarde never got. And I know they managed to make Dialga, Palkia, and Giratina fit into Arceus' game, arguably more than Arceus itself fits into its own game. But so much of Kalos' story and lore was already independent of Xerneas and Yveltal that they weren't really necessary to tell a story about Zygarde. But I also go back to my earlier statement. They're a little too out there thematically. The previous legendary Pokemon represented land and sea, time and space. Zekrom and Reshiram are a little more abstract, but you can still boil them down to yin and yang. Xerneas and Yveltal representing life and death just makes them less marketable across all avenues. In terms of telling a story for kids, in terms of putting them in the anime, or even just making them into plushes or figures, they seem like they have way less of a presence than the other big box legendaries. Quite simply, maybe the Pokemon Company didn't feel as comfortable about Xerneas or Yveltal as Game Freak did. I mean, literally, I have covered everything about these guys in this video, aside from, like, maybe Mystery Dungeon, where, again, Yveltal isn't actually evil, he was just being controlled by dark matter the entire time, which is a whole nother can of worms. Oh, and I guess Xerneas is in new Pokemon Snap, but I can just feel your eyes glazing over at the mention of that game, so I think I'll stop. But yeah, in reality, it was probably the combination of all of these factors. The iffy theming, the lack of dev time, Kalos in general getting the shaft very quickly, and ZA taking things in a completely different direction that all led to Xerneas and Yveltal being Pokemon's most neglected legendaries. But what do you think? Is there another reason why Game Freak has neglected Xerneas and Yveltal so badly? Let me know in the comment section down below. But if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more videos just like this one. I'll see you guys next time.